start, no? In this presentation, there are 154 slides, but we will not be discussing all. So after an hour of discussion, then we stop. So a 5-minute break will also be provided para walang matulog, no? In order for you not to sleep during the discussion. Here, our objectives are the following: define what educational research is, identify researchable topics, identify the research problem. But of course, we have already identified our topics, our problems, considering our concept paper. Then formulate accurate research questions and objectives, write a background of the study, write relevant literature and studies. But in the syllabus, no, since especially in this time of the pandemic, it's very difficult for us to go to the library to look for related literature. You may use the sites or the websites included in your syllabus. Select appropriate theoretical and conceptual frameworks. So in this presentation, we'll also be differentiating theoretical framework to that of conceptual framework, because there were students before, they combined. I'll just accept Melissa. They combined theoretical and conceptual framework into one. But remember the differences between the two when you do your chapters 1 2 3. Then write an effective results and discussion. Hopefully we would be able to discuss this part after discussing all the types of research designs, and then write an effective conclusion. So when can you say that the paper you have written is research? So we have here, if it is supported by evidence or other researchers, now considering our review of related literature, that could be a background of research. Then systematic collection of data, right? So we would be considering a system in gathering the data. If you do that, then you're writing a research. But there are many things now that should be considered when doing the research. So if you gather information from different sources, okay, that could be, if it answers the academic research question, no, your research question, of course, no, after writing your research question, then it's also your responsibility to gather the data to in order for you to answer your research questions. So that's how it is when you do research. It has credible sources, yeah, of course. Explains you've learned after exploring the topics in depth. Okay. So those are the reasons, especially when we do educational research. So what is educational research? It's actually the systematic collection. So one of you said systematic collection of data. But here, systematic collection and analysis of empirical data. So we are not just talking about any data. So it should be empirical data gathered from your participants or your subjects, considering, of course, that the tool, a system, a method appropriate for your research design. But don't forget an analysis. Now, after collecting, you have to analyze. So analysis of empirical data in order for you to, so there are reasons now to develop valid generalizable knowledge that involves four things: description of educational phenomena or phenomenon, predictions about future events or performance, and evidence about the effects of experimental interventions, and explanations of observed phenomenon in terms of basic processes that underlie them. For number one, we're actually talking about descriptive research. For number two, predictive research. And then number three, experimental research. And then for number four, pagod na ka, uh, explanatory research. So we'll talk about the four, no? The four knowledge. And it gives a clear overview of the work ahead on this course. Yeah, it's actually the work, no, the performance task that will be given to you. So again, no, it seeks to produce valid knowledge, meaning it uses a special methods to control for personal biases and confounding factors that might compromise the soundness of its finding. As for the confounding factors, this will be discussed when we discuss
Gusto
threat to
marinig.
threat to internal and external validity. Okay, so narinig ba ako? Na, but I was able to hear you saying hindi ko naririnig, no? Um, Here we would be considering the threat to internal and external validity in order for us to avoid personal biases, particularly in analyzing the data that we have gathered, no? Especially when you are doing qualitative research. The data should be coming from the participants' interview, no? So the transcript of interview. So the interview transcript, no, should be described properly based on the experiences or answers of the participant and not from your own personal biases. And seeks to produce generalizable knowledge. Of course, no, when you are considering sample taken from the population, yung the totality of the possible participants in your research, then it would be generalizable to the population. The results of your research taken, no, from the sample could be generalizable to all the members of the population. For example, you're considering teachers teaching in Marikina, and since there are so many teachers teaching in Marikina, you only use a special method, no sampling technique, to identify sample population that would represent the teachers in Marikina. So when you do that, your result would be generalizable to all the teachers in Marikina. As an example, it relies on empirical data, of course. No? And when you gather data, you will still use special methods or special method to make replicable observations, no? Possible replicable observation of the phenomenon or phenomenon being studied. Sometimes replicable observations because maybe there were researchers already who have conducted the same research. So personal observation and intuitive thinking also can be done, especially when you are doing ethnographic research where you need to observe the participants while they are doing something. When you observe their culture, their practices, so it could be for your own personal observation. However, they do not employ the special methods of educational research when you do this. So again, the four types of knowledge produced by educational research are the following: descriptions, predictions, evidence about the effects of experimental interventions, and explanations. So first, for the descriptions, descriptive research, you're going to describe what is happening considering the phenomenon in your research. And this is intended to make careful, highly detailed observations of educational phenomena or phenomenon or practices, no? Or the strategies that you are using, whether it's effective or not. And it is good for discovering problems of the practice. While you are observing, you will be able to determine issues, problems, concern, whether they are effective or not, in order for you to maybe think of another way in doing it because you observe that it's not effective, no? It's not functioning the way it should function. And predictive research, here we are actually talking about the predictability of the phenomenon to happen in the future when you do predictive research. For example, when you are doing pre-diagnostic tests at the start of the school year, then considering the result of the pre-diagnostic test, you would be able to predict the performance of the students, no? Whether those who perform well in the pre-diagnostic test will perform in the subject or in the course, and those who did not perform well will not. perform in the course or subject. So it seeks to determine whether the data collected at one point in time, yung pre natin, can predict the behavior or the performance of the students in the future or events that occur at a later point in time. So this is helpful in solving problems of practice, and it usually involves the use of group comparison and or correlational method. You would be able to determine the relationship. No, it should be significant relationship of the two variables being identified. Then experimental research, of course, it tries to determine the effects of a particular intervention in a natural or laboratory setting. So as for the particular intervention for us, no, educational research, we always do experimental research, particularly to the approaches, to the teaching techniques or strategies that we are using. As of the moment, for example, you would like to determine the effectiveness or the use of blended learning approach in this time of the pandemic, whether it's effective or not, whether the students are learning or not, whether the students are mastering the competencies or not, what would be the effect of this to the reading capacity of our students, to the performance of our students in mathematics. Okay ba siya or not? It's experimental research. Considering also the platforms that we are using. Teams, is it effective for our graduate students? Is it effective for our elementary students, for our junior high school students, for our senior high school students? How about the other platforms? Which is better? You can compare also, comparative research. You will compare the two variables. But for experimental research, you are trying to determine the effects of the intervention or the learning management system or the strategies or the approaches that you are using in the performance of the students, whether it's effective or not, whether they are learning or not. Of course, explanatory research is concerned about the cause and effect relationship, and it's more of the explanation of the phenomenon about certain phenomenon. I'm sorry for that. Certain phenomenon and phenomena or problems. Tinto. Nako. So considering the six questions, hopefully you can see which of these are considered research topics. Okay, I'll give you a minute or two to write the numbers only. So which of these are considered research topics? Let's see. Mhm. Does the environment literacy of an individual increase with age? So that's check number one. Who is more beautiful, Pia or Catherine? Of course not. No, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. When you gather data to determine who is more beautiful, then it's actually not valid because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What are the challenges, no, experienced by students, scholars? Yes. Does students' exposure to CNN programs improve their speaking skills? Yes. Who are the presidents of the Philippines? No, you can just Google it, then you'll be able to determine the presidents of the Philippines. Who's your president? How reliable are admission tests in predicting the future performance of students in the school? So the answer, 1, 3, 4, 6. Congratulations sa mga nakuha. Alright. So these are the types of research. We have the basic, applied, action, and evaluation. So for educational research, it could be basic, it could be applied, it could be action, it could be evaluation. But the only difference is this, of course, that's the research designs that you would be using. For basic, these are theoretical research and for enhancement of knowledge and does not have immediate and or practical impact to the practice or to the educational system. Uh, for applied research, it's actually a research-based knowledge about the practice with the application and development of the knowledge produced from the research, from the applied research that you have done. It's actually conducted in a field of common practice. For action research, I know you are very familiar with this, no? It's just classroom-based research, and you would be solving immediate problem. As for the basic, no, applied and evaluation, they are very different from action research because action research can be done actually in a week or two because you would like to solve immediate problem that you have observed in your classroom. It's actually a self-reflective inquiry. As an educator, you would be able to observe the problems and then try to think of possible solution to address that problem and then try to conduct research out of it using experimental research, then try to determine whether it's effective or not. Then that's it. If it is effective, then you have the solution. If it's not, then look for another intervention and then that could possibly address the concern, then try whether it's effective or not. It's a cycle when we say action research. For evaluation, this is to evaluate and assess the merit and or worth of a particular practice in the education. For example, the K to 12 curriculum, you would like to assess the 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 modalities that we are using now. Would like to assess and evaluate whether the modalities that you are using that you have adapted in this time of the pandemic ay effective or not, or it does it work, for you as students as well in methods of research or having your master's degree. Do you think that Teams are effective for our synchronous class? No. You can do a research out of it, considering the experiences as well of the teachers using Teams. You know, there are so many platforms suitable for graduate studies or graduate students, suitable for junior high school, and suitable for elementary. No? Kasi for elementary, dapat it should be interactive.